Mahalo nui for coming today. I know there's so many wonderful workshops, and we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. I'm going to introduce myself and my co-presenters just briefly and go over a little bit of an overview and introduction, and then we'll each take some turns presenting a little bit about our own work and what inspires us as writers. And this was conceived as a workshop, so we're going to spend a lot of time working with you all in smaller groups and talking about your own writing. So we really hope to inspire you today to start writing. And aloha, come inside. There's still a few chairs. Hey, Kuchi! I'm glad you're here because I saw your workshop yesterday, and that's perfect with what we're doing. There's some piano benches too, if you guys want.
Got lost finding the room.
Oh, that's okay. So we got lost finding the room too. Okay. So, and one of the things that I've learned over the years is that sometimes your technology gets locked up and people come forget to unlock it. So we'll just deal with that. So our workshop today is called Women's Writing as Mana. I'm Kuʻualoha, Hoʻomanawanui. My co-presenters today are Nuukahau Revilla, who is from Maui, and Jamaica Osorio, who is from Oahu. I was born in Kailua on Oahu in Kuʻualoha. I was raised in Wailua in the Homestead area on the east side of Kauai. I went to public school, all the way, and ended up at the university, well actually ended up at KCC on Kauai for 2 years, transferred to Manoa, and forgot to leave. So I did a degree in Hawaiian Studies, a BA, a master's in Hawaiian religion, and a PhD in English. And what the connection was between those three diverse areas was this idea of mo'olelo and writing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today in a larger scale. So I'm going to just read a little bit because I'm getting a little bit older and I always forget stuff. So as a writer, it helps me to write things down. So our presentation today began from my last presentation at the Wahine in February, which focused on the power of stories in our lives. You were there, yeah? Wow. Okay, so this presentation was conceived more as a workshop where, as I mentioned, we'd like to get all of you writing today, or at least thinking about or talking about writing. So I'll start with just a brief overview, and then we'll take turns, as I said. I want to reiterate a point that I made last time, and that's many times women today will say that we don't know what to write about. I hear that all the time. We don't have time to write. Certainly between trying to balance our hectic modern lives, caring for our families, our professional obligations, school, yeah, for those of you who are still young. That's your professional obligation right now. Our spiritual, our physical, and our emotional selves, our social and community involvements, all of these things ask multiple things of us. So at the end of the day, we think, what the heck, I don't even have the energy to write anything. Sometimes the connection of writing as a valuable cultural practice is overlooked. And over the years, I get many students, Hawaiian students, who will come into my classes, and I'll give a writing assignment, and they will say, kumu, I can't write because I'm Hawaiian. And that is something that I understand where that idea comes from with colonialism, the attachment of English to writing, the attachment of writing to Western culture. But my response to that is usually something like, have you heard of David Malo or Samuel Kamakau or Liliuokalani? Have you heard of Queen Liliuokalani? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, well, they were all writers. They wrote eloquently in Hawaiian, they wrote in English, and it's a heritage that we have handed down to us now for over 100 years. So for over a century, we've been literate people, we have been writers, we relish it, we enjoy it, and we've written about every kind of topic conceivable to the imagination. And what I really want all of us to understand today for us here is that this is part of our cultural legacy that we should embrace and pick up as much as we did other Western practices that were introduced, such as playing ukulele or playing piano. The Queen played piano beautifully. My tutu got to play her piano when she was younger. Quilting is a practice that was introduced from the West. And if we can pick these new cultural practices up and then turn them into something more beautiful beyond what they were originally conceived outside of, why can't we, and why don't we, do that with our literary arts? So that's what we're talking about today here. So when we look at this idea of writing as cultural practice, we need to understand as well that for Kanaka Maoli, for Hawaiians, mo'olelo, this idea of story, is both oral and written. So even if you just talk story, you come home from school, or you come home from work, you say, hey, guess what happened today? You're participating in this practice of mo'olelo, right? When you sit down with your tutu and you ask, maybe you have a school project, where are we from? Where's our family from? What did great grandpa do? That's a part of mo'olelo. That's a part of our writing practice. And it's through these stories that we are able to not just remember and retell our own history about our own family, but how each of these stories is a pohaku that is part of the ahu of Hawaiian culture. It helps build the lahui. Every time we remember and retell a connection, every time we create a connection from an experience, it's another pohaku that goes onto that ahu. It's another pohaku that goes onto that pai pai that helps build the hale for our ohana. And through each individual, each voice, each ohana is the building of the lahui, or the building of the nation. So when we look at women's writing as mana, that's what I'm talking about. And No'u and Jamaica will share their mana'o as well, because of course it's not just one thing, and it shouldn't be just one thing, but that's a starting point for today. So the second thing I talked about last time was the power of stories. So the idea that every person, every culture across time thinks in stories. How we relate to each other comes through story. We dream in stories. We express our love and our hate, our hopes, our passions, our anxieties. All of these things are expressed through stories. We ourselves are stories. And when you think, for example, of your name, whatever your name is, chances are there is a story. No one is given a name without a story behind it. Sometimes the stories are beautiful and moving and eloquent, and we go, oh, that's an amazing story of how you got that name. And sometimes they're really funny. And I'll tell you a story of a student I had when we had to do a writing assignment about introducing themselves. His name was Queston, and his paper was called My Starbucks Name is David, because Queston is an unusual name. So whenever he would go to Starbucks and they say, what's your name? And he'd say, Queston, what? They never get it right, so he just says, my Starbucks name is David. But he told the story of how he got this name Queston. His mother is Korean, and his father was American, and they couldn't decide on a name. So when he was born, they're in the hospital, they have their beautiful son, and the mother says, what shall we name him? And the father says, the name, that is the question. And she said, Queston, I like it. So that's how he got his name, I guess. So, you know, that's a fun story. And he tells that story, right? So there's all these different ways that we're named. They can be beautiful and eloquent, they can be funny, sometimes they might be tragic, they can be commemorative when we're named after someone in the family. I have a long story of how my Hawaiian name, Kuʻualoha, is an Inoa. I was born on my tutu's birthday. She dreamed me before I was born when my mom was hapai. And my English name is Sherilyn because my dad's name was Sam and he wanted names that started with S. So there's two totally different stories attached to my two names. So in all of these cases, there is a story whenever we have a name. So if we're starting to think, I don't know what to write about, that's a good place to start. What is the story of your name? And if you don't know, it's a good time to ask your parents or ask your grandparents how they came up with your name, because chances are you might be surprised if you don't know already. Stories are our past that have been handed down to us through dances and chants and songs and genealogies and jokes and riddles and epics and games and proverbs. They're everything. We have personal stories handed down in our families, stories told by our communities about who we are, where we came from, where we're going, what we value, what our names mean, what it means to be Hawaiian, to be female, what it means to be lesbian, heterosexual, Christian, a cultural practitioner, a lomi specialist, a hula dancer. What does it mean to dance for a particular kumu from a particular halau with a particular genealogy? What does it mean to be a really awesome, cool Xbox gamer? All of these are stories that help make up how we feel about our lives, but more importantly, how we interact in the world and interact with other people. What about the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves? What kind of story do you tell yourself about who you are? What kind of stories do other people say about us? I don't know about you, but my dad still tells a story about when I was 6 months old and threw up on him. It's like, I'm 46, get over it, Dad. Okay. So these stories. And why? Why does he keep telling that story? Okay, what is it about that story that sticks out in his mind all these years later? What stories influence us in our daily narratives that shape our lives? Okay, so the last time I discussed traditional mo'olelo that revolve around powerful Hawaiian women, and I asked the question, why is traditional knowledge still important to Kanaka Maoli today? What do these stories say about us as a lahui, as women, as leaders, as individuals? And how do our stories, or how can our traditional stories, guide us in our everyday lives? Okay, so one example I gave is Hi'iaka Ikapolio Pele goes out and literally slays dragons or mo'o through chant. So her voice, by expressing her voice, she had the power to destroy. And in that same voice, she had the power to revive Lohiau and other people and bring him back to life. So why is that important for us to know this today? Because when we see this as a metaphor, then we can understand that by speaking up and speaking out, we can make changes and we can make a difference. And I'll tell you a story that I'm very, very proud of. I grew up in Kailua, which is now considered an affluent area. But when I was growing up, there were a lot of Hawaiians there because it was cheap land when it was first developed. And maybe about 15 years ago, I lived in Salt Lake area for about a year. And there was a problem. We lived up near the water tank, and there was a problem with illegal dumping. And as someone who's a Malama Aina person, I was really upset by that. So I started going to neighborhood board meetings to stop this illegal dumping. So when I was at one meeting, they were arguing over the widening of Salt Lake Boulevard, and it was just going to be plain concrete walls, and that was it. And I'm sitting there just annoyed, waiting for new issues to come up so I could talk about this illegal dumping. And as I'm hearing all this, I got really annoyed because I thought the city was really trying to pull one over on the Salt Lake people because they kept saying there's nothing we can do, it's already planned, and this is what you got to live with. So I raised my hand and I said, you know, I'm not really from here, but in Kailua, you guys just did widening in Hanamakua Avenue and you put landscaping in. And you put in these really pretty walls and you made it look really nice. So if you can do it in Kailua, why can't you do it here? And that's all I said. And I never went to another meeting. And we moved away from Salt Lake. And a couple of years later, I went back for something. And guess what I saw? For those of you in Salt Lake, what does that road look like now? There's landscaping. There's beautiful walls by Foster Village. And I take credit for that. I do. Because I went and I spoke up, like Hi'iaka spoke up. One, what I thought was a really simple thing. But by speaking up, the other people who are invested in that community probably, I imagine, went, hey, wait a minute. That's right. If you can do nice stuff for other communities, what about us? And they took that up and they made it happen. I didn't make it happen, but I spoke up and I brought up the idea of that. Yeah. So that's a contemporary example of how these things can help us. And then when we look at situations of domestic violence or sexual abuse, speaking up is very, very important. To say something to someone who can help make it stop and help make things better. So that's what I see as very, very important. A role. They're not just stories for entertainment. They're stories that can still help us and guide us along the way. So this time I'd like to shift that focus a bit and ask us to consider women's writing as mana. And by women, I mean Hawaiian women for our focus today. And by writing, I mean composition. Not just putting pen to paper or typing out on a computer keyboard, but the act of recording through story, poetry, plays, essay, or anything. Our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, and our memories. Writing is inevitably a human experience, and the desire to record and preserve information is very, very strong. Creativity and aesthetic beauty is also important in Hawaiian culture, which developed a high artistic state of beauty. And a lot of us are familiar with things like kauna, right? The hidden or metaphorical meaning in poetry as being important. When we look back in time, we know that women composed mo'olelo and mele and oli and hula. They were genealogists and kumuhula and court dancers and storytellers, and these are all still things that we do today. One example, as I mentioned, is Hi'iaka, who's a consummate chanter and composer of such beloved mele that have been passed down through time that we still perform, such as Kunihi Kamona, a pretty well-known mele komo. And before we groan and complain that we're not fluent in Hawaiian and we can't possibly compose such eloquent mele, let's remember that Hawaiian women such as Queen Liliuokalani and Emma Nakuina also wrote in English. And before we lament that we aren't capable of being so poetic as these venerable women, let us remember Hi'iaka's faithful companion, Wahine Oma'o. Wahine Oma'o was reluctant to participate in kilu, and according to Nakuina's version of the story of Hi'iaka, since birth, Wahine Oma'o couldn't sing or chant a note and was quite unmusical. But when they reach Oahu in Ko, as they come along this coastline to Kuʻualoha, Peleula insists that Wahine Oma'o participate in the kilu game. And that meant Wahine Oma'o had to compose a chant. So in frustration, with the kilu in her hand, she blurts out, "O ku o ka o Wahine Oma'o," and throws her kilu. Now that sort of translates to, here I am, Wahine Oma'o. Okay? Not the most poetic piece of Hawaiian composition ever. And Nakuina tells us, and thus ever since this has been the call of people who consider themselves untalented, unpoetic, and unmusical. So perhaps we are eloquent as Hi'iaka. I know Kuchi is a very accomplished, long-time writer. Perhaps we might be saying, "O ku o ka o Kuʻualoha," or whatever your name might be. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because there is a place. And the importance about that part in the mo'olelo is that even when she's basically saying, I can't do this, she's expressing her voice. She's expressing her mana. And she's saying that this is how I'm going to be recognized. I am going to be heard, and here we go. And that allows her to participate in this activity, and it allows her entrance into this world where the Hawaiians we encounter in Hi'iaka are very musical and talented and wonderful dancers and wonderful composers. So here's someone who hasn't participated because she doesn't see herself that way, but in the end she does, right? And she just says, here I am. So here we are today. So at that, I'd like to have my co-presenters come and talk a little bit about themselves and their work, and maybe after I'll share a little bit about my work and what inspires me. So you guys got a jump kind of
Aloha kako. So my name is Jamaica Nalani Osorio, and I feel pretty honored to be here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself and my approach to mo'olelo and writing. I was born, or I grew up in Puʻualoha Valley, which is the valley over from Manoa, on this island. My family originally stems from Keaukaha on the island of Hawaii, on the Hilo side. Yeah, Hilo. My father's name is Jonathan K. Kamakawiwo'ole Osorio. He is a longtime professor, musician, and activist. He teaches Hawaiian studies and wrote a book about the Bannock Constitution and all those really important political things. My mom's name is Mary Carol Dunn. She's from Detroit and has lived in Hawaii. I guess she's kind of from here too, because she's lived in Hawaii since she was 12. My dad says, and I think this is really important, I don't tell a lot of people this, but my dad says that there are two kinds of Hawaiians. There are Hawaiians who have Hawaiian ancestors, and there are Hawaiians who have Hawaiian children. And they are very much a part of our lahui, because they obviously have given birth to a very important part of who we are, and that's how we hold lahui, right? So my approach to writing and mo'olelo first began at Ke Kulakaia Punio Anuenue, which is a Hawaiian immersion school in Puʻualoha Valley. I went there for 6 years before going on to different public schools and eventually Kuhinapapa. And while at Anuenue, we talk about Hawaiian mo'olelo all the time, because what else do you talk about at Hawaiian immersion school? Mo'olelo and math. So I grew up hearing stories like Papa and Wakea, Pele, Hi'iaki Polio Pele, all these really enriching Hawaiian mo'olelo. And it was kind of just in a matter-of-fact kind of way. We didn't understand that it was special that we grew up knowing names like Hina, Haumea, Pele, Papa, all these like very important, powerful Hawaiian women that most of this island knows nothing about. But that was how we grew up. And so I never really saw myself as a writer because I could barely read and write in English until 6th grade. But at some point in high school, I found myself writing spoken word and doing slam poetry. And if you guys don't know what that is, slam is basically the competitive venue of like poetry and people getting on stage and spitting poems and thinking they're really cool and then getting points for it. So I got into that. And at first, writing was all about telling people that I'm Hawaiian. Like, I want people to know these things that I realized in middle school, there were kids in my middle school classes who didn't know what the overthrow was, or didn't know that Hawaii was once its own like nation, which didn't make any sense to me because you're living on this island and you don't even know like the history of the place that you're living on. It's a whole different story when people in California don't know, but if you're living here, what does that mean if we don't know our own stories, right? So I started writing really overtly political work. And then I got a little older and a little more angsty, so I started writing more love poetry and sad stuff about how no one understands me. My mom doesn't know because she's not Hawaiian, and my dad is always working, and nobody knows what I'm feeling. And then when I went away to school is when I really started talking about what it meant to be Hawaiian, and not so much what it meant to be a woman, because I still don't really understand what that means to this day, but really talking about this sense of place and the kind of mo'olelo you carry with you when you leave. This idea of the imi loa, which to me, Hi'iaka is like the most amazing example of this far-seeking. And so I went away to school and really started thinking about Hi'iaka over and over and over again. And I'm not a religious person really, but I would read my Olelo no Eo book like it was the Bible. Like every night I was like, I need a new Olelo no Eo because I can't handle being on this continent anymore. Just reading through it, and I would find more and more about Hi'iaka and more about Pele. And so my senior year, or before my senior year, I decided, okay, even though I promised myself I would never try to do an honors thesis, that this is what I'm gonna do. And that is when I really started to realize the connection between myself as a poet and myself as basically the manifestation of all these incredible Hawaiian women, and kind of a manifestation of my own genealogy and my own mo'olelo, right? So I started reading more about Hi'iaka, and it's kind of there where I realized that mo'olelo isn't really about the details. And it's great that some of us can recall specific details of specific stories and tell you place names, which are really important, and people's names. But I got to the point where it wasn't about what was in the story, it was the fact that the story was there. And even better, if it was a woman telling the story, it was the fact that there was a woman standing there in front of you telling you a story. And so that's kind of where I am now. And I think mo'olelo is the perfect embodiment of our Olelo no Eo, ʻAʻole ka'ike kahalo ho'okahi, right? Not all knowledge is taught in one school. And what's so impressive about mo'olelo is that Kuʻualoha and I could tell the same story in ways that would be, like, you could almost not tell that they were the same story, and yet they're both equally important, and they're both equally authoritative because they give you something different, and it's two women, right? It's two women asserting their voices, two women who know that they have an authority to olelo, to speak, that is really most powerful. So that's kind of where I'm at with my writing, and now as I kind of journey more with Hi'iaka, because I honestly see myself as, out of all the wahine I have read of, or all the wahine that I've kind of admired, I try to attach myself the most with Hi'iaka for some reason. I can't get away from her. She comes up in almost everything I do. And I think what's important about that is that we need to start to realize that we don't need to be reaching 1,000 years behind us to write about women as they were recorded, and start looking at ourselves as the way those women show up in our everyday actions, right? In the way that we talk to our kupuna, in the way that we talk to our mo'opuna, and all of those things. And so now my way of kind of reconciling that, and reconciling this idea of ʻaʻole pau ka'ike kahalo ho'okahi, I'm writing poems, kind of persona poems as Hi'iaka. Mostly poems to hopoi, but also just love poems in general, or writing to someone who, not necessarily a historical piece, but writing to someone I know, but using the way I see myself as a part of Hi'iaka as my entry to mo'olelo. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I don't really have, I want to let No'u talk, because she's a, wow, I forgot the word. She is a mo'o. so that'll be nice to get to.
Aloha mai. Aloha. First of all, mahalo to Kuʻualoha, Jamaica, for sharing this mana'o space with me. And mahalo to all of you for having me here. I feel so blessed to be able to participate in an event that celebrates women's knowledge and women's ike, and really produces a space for us to collaborate and get to know each other, right? That's always good. My name is Nuukahau Revilla. Please call me No'u, it's much shorter. But I was born on the island of Maui. My childhood was divided between Kahului, Hana, and Wai'ehu. My father's ohana comes from Ha'o'u on the east side of the island, whereas my mother's origins can be traced to Papaete Tahiti on her mother's side and Karlsruhe, Germany on her father's side. I have one sister, Kaimalie, who I will be talking about later as the workshop progresses. And since this is about women's writing as mana, my first duty to tell you is that I love to write. I live to write. I was a waitress for nearly 10 years, since I was 16, and every chance I got that my hands were free or a napkin or coaster was available, I was writing. Feverishly scribbling is probably a more accurate description, because anybody here who has experience in the food and beverage industry knows when you're on a shift, your hands are hardly ever free. But last year, I made a very big decision to stop waitressing and hang up my apron and really see if I had what it takes to honor the thing I love to do, the thing I live to do. But after that decision, I had no more excuses. I had no shift to blame. I had no late night restaurant gig to take the fall for my not writing. Everything was on me after that decision. And although I've had the most supportive ohana, the most supportive colleagues, ipo, and friends, that decision was probably the most terrifying but honest experience in my life. As the illustrious Craig Howes has told me probably a little bit later after I made that decision, he said, "No, you need to think about this now. You will never work another day in your life because everything you do is what you love to do." And when he told me that, I just had to take a minute to myself because I felt so lucky. It's a big decision to take all that on and decide to do this for the rest of your life, but to wake up every day and say, I'm gonna write today, I'm gonna teach my students today, I'm gonna research strong Hawaiian women, strong Hawaiian mo'o, and that's my life. And I feel so blessed to be able to do that. But, you know, passion is different for everybody, kuleana is different for everybody, mana is different for everybody. In fact, I asked my sister, Kaimalie, the other day what she thought of as mana. And my sister is a young mother of two, never really understands any of my poetry. And she and I had totally different ideas about what mana means. Mostly because we don't share the same experiences that she bases her idea of mana on. So I went home and I thought about it some more. I made coffee, I walked around my house, I played with my dog, I pulled weaves, I hung out my laundry, I surfed. But none of the words that came to my mind were satisfactory for me. None of the words were enough to describe respectfully what I feel as mana. But there were images. Oh, there were images, vivid, leaping images that were so fundamental, so irrefutable to what I have experienced and what I remember as mana, that I said, that's good for me to see something and know what mana is. And two women came up in my head, my sister and my mother, Debbie. Several years ago, I wrote a poem that I called Getting Ready for Work. And it was collected into a chapbook that was published by Tin Fish Press in 2011. And in the poem are images that is my way of remembering a particularly brutal day in my childhood, where my mother was in the bathroom and she was trying so desperately to get ready for work. And my father was outside beating on the door, screaming the ugliest things, demanding that she comes out. And I remember that day, and my room was directly next to the bathroom my mother was getting ready in. And I remember I huddled into the corner and I sat so close to the wall, separating my mother and I. And I just pictured her trying so hard to put her eyeliner on without shaking, without crying, so that she could go to work, get the money to feed my sister and I, and keep this man banging on her door at bay. And that image of my mother with a still hand putting her eyeliner on has stayed with me my whole life. And I'm happy to say that I performed this for my mother once, and she is in a beautiful relationship with a man that I respect. And my father is on his way to being a more pono man. So I'd like to share that poem with you today, if I can. It's called, again, Getting Ready for Work. And what I want to try and emphasize in this poem are the images that stick with me. And it's the images of that day that made this poem, that obligated this poem to be written. Okay? Okay. Some things specific. Lancome powder foundation in a black case with a mirror. 15 pink tiles in a row on the bathroom wall. Doorknobs. 15 carpet stairs. Other things that I worshipped my mother's makeup. I ate her nylons and read the Bible for her. She sewed prayers into my dresses, and all that I remember is that Eve is more evil than the serpent, and I know now what serpent means. Mother often, mother make up, mother do, mother do. That I never pictured her as creature, her mascara, her Christmas family newsletter face. She had no mouth, no mouth. Your mother had no mouth when she met me. Thing shattered. That his feet were Old Testament down those stairs. That the black case dyed an oyster and the row of pink tiles shit themselves. That eyeliner is surgery, and my poor mother continued. Her poor doorknobs. That choices are made to keep pretty. Mother, do mother. I, a mouth, eating pretty like glass, kissing and reflecting that dirty thing. Yet a wall separates us like a terrible thing. And the pretty is in pieces all over the floor. When I performed that poem, my mom came up to me because she does not believe in hanging dirty laundry out to dry in front of everybody. And I was ready to get lickings from her, you know, emotionally. But she came up to me and she started crying. And it's things like that that I write, to bring the truth out at some extra dimensional, extra sensory level that just makes sense. So today, later on, when I tell a group of you about my sister, I want to talk about another poetry exercise that will rely on image and your images of mana, and how to work with those images to produce a poem. Mahalo nui loa.
So I'm going to share a poem because I got really jealous. My printer wouldn't work this morning, which is kind of how things are supposed to work, right? When you need it to work, it doesn't. So I'm actually going to read I was kind of struggling to decide. I knew I was going to share some poem today, and I was struggling to decide between two. And I talked a little bit about these two both earlier. One is specifically a persona piece, as Hi'iaka talking to Hopoi, saying, "As I leave you, these are the things I give you," which is a newer poem, so I love it a lot. But I'm going to read something a little different. And this one is this one's important to me because it brings mo'olelo into something so simple and so everyday to me, which is love poetry. And my own, and not me writing as someone else, but me writing as myself. So I'll read it. It is called "To the Woman I Would Have to Be for Her." Remember when your hands were dirty, carried the stray pieces of hearts you weren't mature enough to care for, how everything you touched dehydrated, turned to stone, how your uneasiness crushed every statue girl you ever loved, how you were the bearer of dust, of rubble, of broken hearts and empty sleeves. Do not forget the scars, how their brokenness entered your palms in shards, stayed there, left its mark. How every time you touch a glass girl now, you crack her with the diamonds crusted in your love lines, because this will be the way you remember to love her stable, steady, her only. Think of her as anything but a bypass, a highway, a sunrise or sunset, anything that makes you feel fast, short, and beautiful. Call her something frequent, something forever. but less heavy. Don't call her an ocean. You gave that name to someone else you love differently. Call her beautiful. Even though it has been said, it is a name she can understand, something she can grasp, and it will not scare her to hear. But make sure you mean it every single time, that you look at her like it's a promise. When she learns to trust you with the shards of her mother tongue in private, tell her you love her. Even though you have known for months, until she is willing to say it in a language your blood can understand, stay silent. Then, stop translating everything you say and give her the original transcripts. Give her a name for every morning you wake up thinking of her smile. Ho'okukalani, for the way she seems to put stars in every one of your skies, haumea, for the way she makes you wish you were more of a woman, pele, for the way she can burn every inch of you with her gaze and silence, papa, for how she seems to have given life to everything around you, la'e kawai, for how you travel all the islands to find her because you have heard of her beauty and you trust it. Take every mo'olelo you have ever read or heard and find a place for it on the breath between your bodies, because find purpose in her kiss, because you know that this kind of memory is embodied. And when you are sure, when you are steady, finally, call her hi'iaka. Hold her in your chest. Make sure she is the one you will keep, the one who will stay. When you run out of names, of women, of trees, of roots, call her something heavier. Call her moana, for the bluest parts of you, the dark spots, the cracks you hope she'll someday see and learn to love. Learn not to let fall through you, slide off your skin. When you reintroduce her to your father, use the pronoun ku'u, because it fits. Because ko'u is too serious and ka'u doesn't quite do it. Tell him that she is every moon you have carved on your skin, and you are every tide that follows. Tell him that she is the morning you have been waiting to name. That most nights you are kept awake by the thought of your lips on her temple, and that somehow you have found every single one of your gods in the melody of her breath. Tell him that she is real and that you are ready. That she is hi'iaka, and you are hopoi, writing poems for every part of her body about how you would burn under the weight of her mistakes, while planting songs in the form of yellow lehua trees, hoping that the salt water between us might grow something worthy of her love.
I was excited to have Jamaica and No'u come, because one of the things that I wanted everyone to understand, as I think Jamaica said, "Aole pauka ike kahalau ho'okahi," is that there are many ways to express who we are and what we want to write about. So I too I'm going to share a poem, and I had a really hard time for the same reason, that there's different ways to talk about different kinds of things. So I think I know which one I'm going to share now. All right, and I haven't shared this before. I always try to get my dad to write, and he's the famous, I don't know what to write. So this is called Dad's Mo'olelo, and then it goes into a poem that I wrote for one of his mo'olelo. I am the pen of my father's memories, writing down his words, scribbling furiously to keep up with his animated expression, memories, some funny, some sad, bursting forth from cerebral cortex, dancing across his eyes, tumbling from his lips, resonant tones recovering the past of nearly a century of living and beyond. I write with my pen smooth arcs and loops, sometimes jagged scrawls like my own personal hieroglyphics, scrambling to keep up with his dancing tongue, an awkward tango. I will write in pink ink, pressed into paper lined blue, pen seeping, memories bleeding, tapped into story. The past is now. George Long. George Long lived at Kalihiwai, quiet, shy, best friends with Uncle Inoka, Kakulaka. His father had a store down in Kalihiwai until the 1940 tsunami destroyed it and drowned everyone in the Lung Ohana, except George, who survived and moved to Oahu to make a new life, homeless, less Ohana. He would visit Uncle in Kalihi, and then when the Ohana moved to Kailua, he would visit there too, bringing Chinatown roast pork, rice cake, manapua, apple bananas from his small front yard. When Dad was 5, Uncle and George enrolled him in the National Frogman Association, who sent him a silver fin set charm for a keychain he didn't own, and a bumper sticker, even though he was far too young to drive, for the car they didn't have. Uncle and his best friend George took Dad to Ka'aava to spear fish, a long and narrow winding road from Kailua. In those days, they had it practically to themselves, no tour buses weaving in and out along the thin strip of road dividing Mauka from Makai, until they reached their spot. Dad donned his little fins. Uncle and George walked the reef on tabied feet, spears in hand, making their way a quarter-mile out from the shore to the edge of the reef, holding the breakers at bay. An assortment of fish flash kaleidoscope colors shimmering in Ka'aava's sunlight, melt into liquid lapis, azure, turquoise, sea blue seas. With full baskets and a rising tide, they made their way back slowly across the uneven reef when, perhaps dreaming of pa'ku'iku'i sprinkled with pa'akai fried, or inenui with inamona raw, or upupalu with limu manuea, Uncle stepped in a hole, his tabied right foot caught in a crag, drowning. George dropped his spear to help. Dad dove down to release Uncle's foot from the reef's grasp, his little brown legs and armed, thin feet strong and sure. They made it to shore, all of them. Fish and all, Dad says. Fish and all. Uncle never told that story when we were young. Neither did Dad, an uncle-nephew bonding thing. Just another no big fishing story, the one that almost got away. So I show that to my dad. I'm like, see, just write that down. He's like, oh, but you did it so much better. So I might have undercut the purpose of trying to get him to write. But what we'd like to do now is to break you up into groups. And I know that we each have a different type of writing prompt or writing assignment, and we'll take some time to do that. And then towards the end of our time together, we'd like to bring everyone back together. And if some of you would like to share, I actually have a couple prizes. So, yeah, small kind. So, I don't know, we'll just sort of divide up. You guys can sort of choose who you want to be with. I'll tell you, one of the things that I'd like to work on is just, if you're not even sure where you want to start writing, that would be me. I know No'u will already have you start writing, and will you be doing the same thing? Yes, okay. So,
how many people should be recording?
Try to keep it relatively even. So I don't know, it looks like we'd have about 10 people each or so. I'm terrible at math, but that's just my guess looking around the room.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just going to go back in that corner, so anyone wants.
Yeah, I'd like to use a bit of the board, so I'll be up in this corner. And then...
And you guys should go with someone else.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do the workshop tomorrow.
And the camera can move around wherever the camera would like to go.
Awesome.
All right. Okay, great.
Wait.
Right. Just turn a little bit. All right. There. You get yourself face aside. I've done a year ago. Everyone.
How's everybody doing? So I hate starting things like we don't know each other, and I know we're not best friends, but I like have a sense of your name and stuff, because that's a common way to start. Can we all just say
our names and maybe why we're here at this workshop. My name is Noe. I'm here, one, because I'm kind of leading it, and two, like I said, I love writing, but I write poetry. So if you guys want to write stories or other stuff, please go ahead and message me.
So, would you like to give me any number? The person's name. Word. Yeah. All right, good. So we have that. And, okay, give me an adjective that describes that. Any adjective? Nothing. Or no. Sorry. Give me a verb, something like that. Just give me words associated. The laughing dad is cooking. All right. Now give me another adjective that describes dad.
What do you write right now?
A color.
Nothing. I bet you write stuff. Do you write on Facebook?
No.
Oh, do you write text?
All right, we're being creative already. I love it.
Okay, cool. We got you ready for today, though. Definitely.
Right? Okay, so we have an image of this game. Right, so we can go from here. We can create this jolly poem. I sort of see that. Jolly, happy dad is cooking with family, cooking with love.
Your own story.
Right,
What
so
are words that you would
let's
associate? If someone was telling the story of you,
verb. Give me another verb.
what kind of word would they use? Good time.
Singing, okay? So the dark chocolate laughing dad.
So what's a good time?
Singing. Okay. Do you have the same image in your head?
Laughter.
No. Okay, so maybe we have now Aaron laughing.
Okay.
All right, so give me another adjective besides laugh. Any descriptive term. Driving. Okay. Well, doesn't quite want everything creative. Okay, the dark chocolate driving dad is singing. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe it's one of the bus driver guys. Okay, so he's singing. So then you can say, okay, so what is he singing?
I'm so
He's singing Hawaiian. He's singing Britney Spears.
Hot Times in the City.
Hot Times in the City. Hot Times in the City. He's singing. Get it. All right. Let's change one of the adjectives. Okay, instead of a dark chocolate. Okay, what other kind of descriptive can we use? Sunburn. Okay.
So when I have writer's block, I'm always like, what am I going to write about? And then usually I'm like you guys, I write what I feel. And if I feel confused, then I can't really write something that makes sense. So I thought of a little exercise that kind of takes this intellectual, like you got to think about it. I think put something on paper, and once something's on paper, you have something to play with. That is fun, right? You have the material and you can just like move it and groove it and everything is cool. So like I said, when I thought about money, I thought about me, my mom, and my sister. And I'm about to show you this photograph I took of her. She had just given birth to her second child, and we were at the beach. Do any of you have children? No, I don't either. She does, not me. But she had just given birth to her second child, and she had been in the house all day for a whole month. Just her and her two kids, because her baby daddy is. So she was taking care of her kids by herself. She was in the house with them, just them three. So you can imagine how much aloha you have for your keiki. You're gonna go a little crazy, right? So we finally got out to the beach, and I personally think not only is my sister one of the most gorgeous people I know, she is the strongest person I know. One, because of her uncooperative man in her life. He's not around for the children, he's not around for her. But she powered through and she took care of herself and she took care of her children. So I was watching her, and she took a little moment, and and she took a chair. You know that plastic chair you had at a garage party or whatever? So she took a plastic chair, she walked into the water, I'm like, and she put the chair in the water. I'm like, okay, all right. And she sat down and she began putting her hair up. And for me, as a Hawaiian woman, and I used to have really long hair, watching a woman put up her hair is one of the most strong things ever. I love watching women put their hair up, especially in my family. You got the hula dancer hair in my family. So, and when you put up your hair, if you're mad, you put it up in a certain way, right? If you're tired, you put it up in a certain way. If you're trying to be sexy, you put it up in a certain way, right? So that act is something I always pay attention to. So at the beach, so I snuck this shot of her, and she had no idea I was even looking at her. And she was just putting up her hair because I was playing with the kids, no one was bothering her, and she just had this moment of her me time, kind of me time. And it was one of the most mana things I've ever seen in my life. This image has taken me through a chapbook that was recently published, a colloquium that I participated in, and a poetry performance that I was part of. This image got me through all of that because I remember it and I my spirit like you know what I mean? So what I want you guys to do, it doesn't have to be a woman, but when you think mana, I want you guys to get an image in your head. You guys can write it down or you can just hold it in your head. I don't want you to think of a word, I don't want you to think of anything else, just an image. Take your time. Maybe not, I don't know. But when you guys have it, just hold it. Is it hard for anybody? Is this hard? No? Okay. Everybody got an idea? Got an image?
Okay, so there's two things.
Everybody, nobody had not an image?
One.
So think of an image.
Maybe a little bit more traditional.
Now, I want you to hold it in your head. Hold it in your head. Take your paper, and I want you to divide your paper in 3 columns.
Something more contemporary. What else might we think of?
So one.
What else? Beverly Hills. Huh? Beverly Hills. All right. What else?
So like that. Do something like that. Ooh, folding. Love the folding. Anything up.
All right. So.
Okay. So, and I got the instructions right here just in case you can't understand me, because I can kind of speak fast when I'm excited. So the first column, I want you to label action.
So I'm a big advocate of, right? What you know. Start with what you know. Okay, so that's yourself.
The second column, I want you to label consequence.
Just jot down, okay, what are things that come to mind about this place? All right, so then you might see something here that you can start with.
You can spell it however you want, girl. Doesn't matter, it's yours.
It can be right away.
And then the third column, I want you to write revision.
Right, or you can look to other sources if you want to.
So I'm going to explain these columns for a little while. Meanwhile, keep that image in your head, don't let it run away. If it runs away, chase it back later. So in the writing process, you write, right? You make a draft, and then your teacher says what? You have to revise it, right? But I want to kind of play with that idea of revision. So I want to play with the idea of revision, seeing again. So in this, we're going to play with everything. So think of your image, and in every image, it has potential to move. Something is moving in that image. It's gonna move. It did move. It wants to move, right? And that's the action. Just like writing. In order to write, you gotta write. You gotta sit your ass down and write, right? No excuses. If you don't write, that's your fault. And that's what I've learned since I've quit waitressing. I don't have the excuse to not write anymore. I gotta write. So that's the action part. Now the consequence, you sit down and write, what happens? You get something done. Maybe it's a piece of shit, maybe it's not. But you did something. Just like in an image, just like in action, you do something, there's a consequence to it. So I want you guys to think it's fluid. I want you to take your image and know that it's going to do something, like ocean. It's going to move. It does something. It wants us to do something. Just like your stories, just like your poetry. It has a mind of its own. Now the revision part, just like your teacher tells you, you know what, this could be a little bit better. I want you guys to revise it, make it more clear, make it more dramatic, make it do something more vivid. In your image, what I want you guys to do, since this is a poetry exercise, that revision column is your opportunity to do something else than what you did in the first two columns. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys examples. Examples. I'm sorry, Laura.
You're good, you're good.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be in your bubble. Is that okay?
No, you're good, you're good.
Okay. I'm going to be in your bubble. That's good. Okay. So action. Hamnani stroked her silver hair. Consequence. I have my hair. You know, gorgeous. My revision was Wahine held her breath. So the background to this is, does everybody know who Nalani is? She was a mentor of mine. So I would go into her office and talk story a lot, right? And one day she just put, again with the hair, right? She put her hair back with this beautiful koa hair piece. She stroked her hair, and I literally like, you know, because it's Nalani, and Kate Trask, you know, like, wow. And then Wahine is the name of the rain in Maui. So I imagined in my revision column that Wahine, the rain, would just come down, and this rain sees this gorgeous, strong political leader putting her hair back, and even the rain wants to hold its breath. That's my revision. That's my playing with it. Okay? So another example. Auntie Millie covered her children from the wind. Consequence. Her pareos sailed away. My revision is taken, said the pareo. The wind took me from her. So I personified the wind. The wind had, hey, I wanted to sail on her, but hello, the wind took me from her. So in this exercise, you can be as playful, poetic, or literal as you want. Okay? My last example. And this pertains to me, since my name is so long, and I went to public school most of my life. Nuukahau is not exactly easy to say, so I had teachers just butchering my name all the time. Okay? My grandma said, tell everyone your full name. The consequence of that, Mrs. Motoyama laughed at me. My revision is, my grandma said nothing, but her stick went missing. The backstory is that my grandma went to school and she tore Mrs. Motoyama a new one. So do you guys kind of get it?
Really important.
So the first two columns, the action, some part of your photo, consequence of that action, and then in that third column you get to play with it. So if I were to go back to this image, in my experience when I wrote my poem for this workshop, I looked at my sister's elbows, how they lifted her knuckles as they crunched up to put her hair together, her actual putting her hair up together, things like that. They don't have to be big actions, just movement. Just think of the movement possible in your images. You guys still have all your images, right, in your head? Okay, so this is an example. If you guys ever get lost in the workshop, I'm going to let you guys do your thing. So, like I said, you guys can be as poetic or as literal as possible. So one example will be, she unsticks her back from it. That's the first action I did. Because you know, hair at the beach, it gets stuck to her neck, right? So in order to put up her hair back, she had to unstick it. So that was my action. The consequence, on the beach, they gasped, poorly trained. I'm talking about the tourists who are not used to seeing a beautiful young mother do that. First of all, I mean, she dragged a fucking chair into the ocean, you guys. So all the tourists are like, okay, so that's the consequence. And then my play was navigating the black whipping mass. The black whipping mass is my sister's hair. Okay? So you guys have so much range in this, okay? Just play. I'm gonna give you guys a lot of time.
not just
honor the
capturing that
system.
moment,
Does anybody
but
have any
also
questions?
a lesson in there, right? And we
No?
always say, pay
All right.
attention. Like Jamaica talks about the goddesses and the Kuʻualoha. They influence our writing now in direct and indirect ways. So here, in the fishing story, I'm not talking about, and they went out and prayed to Kuhinapapa because my family is Christian, but we still go on fish time, and we still catch the fish. And there's still that, when we had just, they didn't, rape the ocean and all the new big nets, right? They took what they could carry. And it's also the story about, besides the direct ohana, but the bonding, right? So here's, Brandy lost his whole family in this tsunami. And he had to sort of recreate, yeah, right, through my uncle and stay connected with my family after that. So, I feel like we're going to just keep talking about the topic. Are there any kind of questions you have about what kind of writing you'd like to do, what kind of writing you started, what some of the issues or challenges are in writing, anything like that?
Remember that this is, I'm not expecting you to have anything completed in 10 minutes, but try to put ending on it.
Roll out
Bring yourself to somewhere where you're comfortable.
genres completely. I think a long time ago within Western writing, things like sonnets, or maybe Eastern, like a haiku, like in Japanese culture, that demand a syllable count and demand a certain kind of thing. Those can be really challenging, and that isn't a start. I start with something more straightforward. And then even in Hawaiian poetry, you can have structure that's important. So I don't start with that. I start with the idea, and then I work from the idea. And then once you get comfortable with that, if you want to try working in genres, then if you see stories, you have a little bit of a foundation of confidence, and then try to work into the structure. So something like a haiku is easy to start because it's relatively short. Like a sonnet is 15 lines and all of this stuff. So you're working with 3 lines, 3, 5, 7, 5. So that's like a comfortable, it's like an easy compared to like the big fat one, right? Like, easy compared to like meaning that solid. So I'll start with something that's a little bit simpler. And I know one of the things I do in your that I love is she links haiku. So I look at it like a leg where you have like each haiku becomes a puzzle, becomes a stanza. But instead of just writing one thing, you put one, you put the next, you put the next, you put the next, and the whole thing tells a story. And that, I think is really, I've done that with one poem. So you can get your whole story and whole big thing has a beautiful structure that individually is conceived as a form. And when you put them together, I say the whole day.
Just right now, just underline it.
And you know what? If you guys are having a hard time thinking about something on paper, if you're kind of having a blank even now, just put down the first thing that comes to your head. Doesn't even really make sense. We'll deal with that. That's later on. Right now is passion. Right now is response. That's it. So you guys don't have to worry about it. Make it sense.
And I have a hard time in this thing. All you can do is start going and then, okay, somewhat what I wanted to say, but there's not really capturing the essence of what I want.
Okay, let's because that's very common too. So would you mind sharing a couple of your ideas? Yeah, whatever you share.
While you're underlining, think about how those pieces how you're gonna work with it. Okay, of course, you're not only taking the most, what you make it the most important moments in your life, but how those moments make sense.
Okay.
And if you somehow think you're done with your columns, try to write a poem. Try to take all those things and make it a poem. Challenge.
Okay. Okay, so these are 3 ideas that are not directly linked. So, and I'm not even going to suggest that they should be. I'm sure we could link them if we want to, but not ideas of how to do it. So what I would suggest, what I often do, is I work on multiple things at one time. And and this is the thing about writing. I read somewhere once that Mary Kuhinapapa wrote on scraps of paper and just put it in a box, and that eventually became the big fat little And so we have this idea that we need this magical, and the magic of that in a magical, perfect world. The magic pen, where the children are never upset and screaming or the husband or the boyfriend or the job or whatever, right? And we want to bring Mary out of her. So what I love about that idea of very clinical cookie writing on scraps of paper is that that's realistic. That's very realistic. I do some of my best writing sitting in traffic. And I don't write per se, I leave messages to myself. I used to text myself, but now we're not supposed to be texting while we're driving. But I remember leaving a message to myself once I was driving through Honolulu, it was pouring rain, and I just had this image of the mud being like brownie batter. I thought, that's a cool image. So I called myself and I said, the mud is the brownie batter. If anybody ever listened to that, that should be okay. So scraps of paper, I have multiple notebooks, sometimes a box of napkins, multiple files on the computer. Okay, so you have 5 minutes to sit down. I can know to get out of the shower, if you're being wet, to write down the idea of and I might not get back to it for a week or a year or 5, right? But to write down the idea when you have it, to write down the amount when you have it. And so I always do what I call people, right? The people is the center, people writing. And a lot of us when we write, we have to start at the beginning, with the once upon a time, and we have to end with the after, and writing on the linear structure. It's not. So it's never like right now. You want to know who you have on the importance of prayer. To me, really the people of everything. It's everything Hawaiian. Okay, perfect. That is where I would start. You write down Kule is the people of everything Hawaiian. Yeah, scrap of paper. Yeah, write it down right now. Scrap of paper goes into the
I like to record myself, but sometimes when I just talk to myself, I say all these things and then I go and kind of get a very play. I remember all the things that I wanted to talk about, and I just do them.
Yeah. So instead of trying to think of this perfect opening, you start with what is that burning thought of whatever your idea is. And what is the most important thing you want to say about that? Because then, instead of doing this very linear, like beginning to end, it's like this is the people, and then the idea is radiated out from there. Okay, so you put Kule, most important. And the next idea you have about Kule might not be directly related to this, so you can add this over here. So once I look at it this way, I always use the lei making metaphor. Okay, whether you're going to haku or sew a lei. What's the first thing you need to do before you make a lei? What do you need to make a lei? You need flowers, you need string or some sort of cordage, right? Okay. So starting the writing process is like going out to gather your flowers. Before you gather your flowers, you kind of have to have an idea of what kind of lei you want, right? That's your idea. So are we going to string up the Maria lei? Are we going to make lei ua, right? Both lei, both beautiful, very different things.
Which is super cool and contemporary. But if you want to do it old school way, just take what you have here. You guys, if you guys notice, you build a momentum. I don't know. Do you guys find yourself building a momentum for stories and things? So once you guys feel ready, you can take everything here and make a poem. Even if you only use one line, that's still one line that leads to something that you want. Hopefully. So you guys can either leave it like this, or please start again. Because when we come back, we're going to share some work, and I hope one of you, all of you do share. Yeah. So if you guys want to, start a poem. Or start another image and start 3 new poems. Whatever you guys want to do. Actually, you know what? Let's take a super quick break. I want everybody to share one series. So when I say series, I want everybody to share one action, one consequence, and one revision. Just so that you're whole up here on the track field.
On the track field, I'm going to get to my goal. Breathing in the hot, dry air, I try to fix on the choice. Strong masculine air against the heated red earth, hot air clouds around my face and red.
Determined forehead. Hey, I'm working with some cool girls, man. I love that. See? So that's one example. Who's up next? You know what? Let's just go in a circle so there's no pressure. Well, there's actually kind of pressure for the next person, but let's just go in a circle. Girls, really? How come? Really? Does it? No. This exercise is not about right or wrong. It's about getting something on the paper. So just read me something. Her father comes down. That's the start of it. If you want to do a story, I like that. So run away from that. I like that.
Their heads held high, she had stance of a strong woman with a lot of pride.
Try to force yourself into this box and said,
See, you guys are awesome. I'm so blessed to have this kind of group. Go ahead. And don't be ashamed, you guys. Everybody has their own writing.
Water dripping down my fingers. Emotion is calm.
Whatever you want to do.
So I was, she was still little, and I feared smothering her with my hands. When I moved, she moved around me like the earth around the sun. I became the center of her universe, and she became the first thing. Can I say what the image is? Yes. With the yeah.
Okay.
I have this little dog. She's a little Chihuahua. She used to sit on the floor, like when I first got her, she'd sit on the floor and she'd cry. She went in bed with me, and I was like, it's a little squishy. It was like a single bed. So I put her up in bed, and I told her, I said, here's the rules. Dance around me. And the next morning, she just woke up, she was like, and I can tell she hadn't slept all night because I tossed and turned, and she went with me. The next morning, she was in her lap.
Cute.
Like my daughter.
Thanks for that extra note. That reminds me, it's also very important if you guys want to write to have people that you can trust. Like, girl, like I got, or guy, whatever, friends. I have a poem that I had, or I just wrote something, and I trust you. I know you're not gonna put me down, and you're gonna listen. Are you willing to work with me? To have someone, or maybe a group that's a lot better. It's always good to bring out your own work. And this exercise can actually turn into something you can do with other people. So for instance, you start with the action, you have the image, action, you give it to her, she fills out the consequence, even though she has no idea what you're really thinking, and then the next person fills in the revision. So that can be group play, and I've done that before, and it's awesome because it comes out with a lot of weird, surprisingly cool stuff. And when you work with other people, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So if you two want to do that, if you want to do that, then that's cool that you guys can share. Or if you guys want to do it again, you guys can do a whole group one if you want. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. She stood and I had left the weight, still had her cheeks lavish, and I left. She left ashamed and embarrassed. My mom, my inspiration.
I sometimes ask people,
like I said, it doesn't have to be happy poem. You know, poetry for me, especially in the beginning, was a way to get a lot of dark stuff out that I can't just say in a conversation. Like, hey, no, how's your day? I don't know, my dad's beating down my mom's door. You know, you can't say that in conversation. But poetry is definitely an outlet to get bad stuff out. Go ahead.
Something that creates instant reaction. We also had this reaction when I said the word, everyone just slightly it has a good reaction.
I like
rain filled the hallway. Children reach for the doors. Kanye gives us life. The choral for our always set. The Kuʻualoha women arrive. Energy penetrates. Cookie the cola effortlessly. Reach, strain, and pull to the floor. Energy lines connect us.
Is that a poem or are you just reading a
I'm just
column?
reading the
You know, mahalo. See, it can also be a poem by itself. You guys ready or you guys need more time? I need more time. You sure? Do you want to read one? Or you needed more time? Oh, okay, shoot. Okay, so that's what's happening. That's what can happen. You know, you guys want to go back to it? Keep going, go ahead. If you guys want to start a poem, go ahead. Whatever you guys want to do. But we are going to come back to share. So if you guys want to start on a poem, like if you want to share a poem with the group, then I would suggest starting it now. Yeah.
They got sent home from school, and all the Hawaiian had with us, those people were crying, she came home with her mom, was crying, I mean, that's a story I never saw before. And I think it's very important to tell. And one of was her personal experience in that family. And the other had more great about food. And that's something that keeps getting very, very about all good. So, we have to think about those kinds of things, like why are we because they just went down the road had the same experience, they never told it because they never heard it, and now they just think, comparing to just told a story, you know, and so it creates people older to come out with the stories that can then counter that information, all around me, these are all like such important, really common questions that I'm glad you guys asked. Because that's usually the ones that are barriers that people don't fight. If not, I have a little exercise. Anyone want to start? Okay. And you can ask me anything afterwards. Right. So.
Well, that's good, right? Because then it would be ours, right?
I would like you to.
That's the point of this.
One of two things.
Exercise, though.
Okay, so you might have an idea, right, of something that you want to write. Okay, and you might not. So if you don't, I can help you with that, right? So I want you to write it down, and an idea you have. If you don't have paper, I think you got notebooks. And we're not here in that. All right, so just write down the word or a phrase of something that you're considering writing. And if not, like I said, what am I doing? Why am I trying to? What do I know? Instructions, go, fuck. Get together, some emphasis got together and said, something like no is where if you don't hear from David, it can be more random and then intentional. I know what I do, right? Hear me. They know what I do not know. But they know me, so I must be my own work. I search, but I search only for myself. Not anger, no time,
square no more. No more the forgetting. Anyone, it grows, it knows, it grows, eternally is. If you don't have to know it's not God, the word God, I'm not talking to this God. They are my gods and they are not your gods. As you know that. So there's no order this web. There's no orchestration. There's no one pulling the strings. And
What I did last time I put as an idea, we kind of called out different what y'all thought when you think of that thing. And right? So take your idea
they are my
and then give you a thing. Just free write, jot down like whatever you want that comes to mind this end about that one.
This is idea uplifting to where
Only choose one, there's another word you right? There's nothing to talk about.
This is reading on. Then the short version is born of darkness. Some ancestors got together and decided me as my own mind. The many pieces having this being on. Yeah, I think that's crazy.
Very good. That's really good. I love that. Some ancestors got together and decided to make it. That's awesome. I wrote it down. Oh, yeah. Thanks for participating. Anyone else want to share? These things are hard because I try to make time for everyone to share, but if one shares, it seems like I'm because I don't have any notes. I'm here for if everyone shares, I'll have at whatever you're comfortable sharing.
My title is called Imperfection.
Imperfection.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
My mother labored for 36 hours to bring me to life. In actuality, it was a manic 9-month experience. But it was through her magic and the help of my father that I came to be. I was born. I was me. A lifetime of experiences. Lincoln Elementary, where I learned to protect my younger cousins from bullies. 5th grade, I watched state. It's really not a big deal for 5th graders, but I was the best breaststroke ever. 7th grade, I completed all of the Hobbit or the Ring trilogy, and that's when I learned my love for words. That's when I learned to love stories. At 16, I was more than I thought I could ever. Oh, no, at 16, I lost more than I ever thought I could live without. And that's when I learned pain, and I learned to experience life with loss. But in the end, I came out stronger. I was able to laugh, and I learned from those loss that I can survive. I've created, I've written, I've scribbled, I've photographed, I've painted, I've filmed, and I've dreamt. I imagine a world where I can be. And the short version is titled Puzzles. I learned to love and laugh.
So everybody went, good job.
Oh yeah, everyone.
I'll go if you go. I'll go first.
Awesome.
I shared the title of mine. It's called Place. And I started writing it because I started with the beginning of my story. I started about writing where I grew up, where I've lived, all the places, why I lived there, and what my real story is. It's like speaking more about where I am today, about where I'm going.
It's a great way to look at it, telling your story that all the places you've set roots.
Pressure's on you.
My sentence.
Awesome.
Shattered stone, and she was truly born. She was truly what? Born. That's it.
Okay, let me get my computer.
Hold on.
You guys don't have anything else you want to share?
No, all you know.
Or anything you guys want to write? Voila, an instant poem. without really even thinking about it. Now, this kind of stands on its own, but then what we could do is if I was working with kids, I would have them maybe illustrate this, or make some sort of collage where we have something with food, or then add different pauku from kids, and then say, when I was young, I remember. I wasn't right. Or I can say, all right, give me a story, give me a sentence about a memory you have eating with your ohana. Okay. So from there, we can go holiday, a birthday, a baby luau, Sunday dinner after church, late lunch at the lunch wagon, picnic at the beach. This can go 100 different directions. Okay, but it started with just one image. I always look at writing as a snapshot in words. Okay, so in one sentence, that central idea.
So they're like, it's like side by side, right? So if you're Hawaiian and in English, and usually what happens is my dad does it's called something Samoa, and it's this slacky instrumental. It's gorgeous, like love song, and usually I read the Hawaiian, and then I read the English verse, and then I read the Hawaiian verse, and then I read the English verse. But since he's not here, I'll just read the English. And it's a poem from young to the boy as she is leaving her to find O'Neill. As I leave you, I will sing for you only one song in my departure, only one promise in this submarine that leaves with you behind, my truest sign of the day, that nothing will ever eclipse the shadow that shakes from us like water, where the yellow liquid stills the chills settling in our koko. You and I never were. We always are. Chose instead of the stillness of past the dance found in this forest. We are part of this temporary bodies into this home, into this valley, this crater that grows us in every direction. Watch the parts of us as we feather into flowers. Your lips, how they fold into the soil, how you are every part of this home I love, and fear to leave. Watch how the growth happens all around, and how the birthplace turns into song, turns you to dance, turns us both together. Forget that I am leaving. Forget the horizon. Forget that there is more beyond the walls of this aina, this ahu extending into sky. Remember the calm of this moment, the forever of this voice, and know that I will return, either in body, spirit, or song, so that our dance shall never end. Ooh! Yeah, Yak is pretty cool. The Hawaiian? Yeah. Ho'okahimele wale o e himeni ai. Ho'ulale ana. Ho'okahi olale pa'a I ko'oki o no kino o ko'okulia. He pua o Kuʻualoha no. A ohe mea. E pōuli ana ka pālulu I ne'e mai keia liko le ua. A ohe e pōuli ka ho'omali ana o ke anu o kōpua. A ohe o pena. A ohe kahi pōhulana. A ne'i wala no. Ke la ka ano o ia aloha. E hula I pai pūi ka nā hele. E kanu keia kino. I keia awa. Kia rua pele a mau e ulu mai I na awa hau. E Kuʻualoha kupa e maho. E hānā I ka hulana o maua kino. Ke hulu ana ke kino o pahe pua. Kou lehe lehe. Ho'u pelu I kia lepo. O oi kia aina ia uia o ha mau. E nāna ke ana I kia hulana. He ano e hana mele. Ano hana ula, te ano e huli a lilo ki kino, huli a lilo I ke aloha. E poina I ko'ulele, e poina I ka hawa mai, e poina ki a ahupoa, e huli a hana I ka lali, e noala mai ka hulia o ke iau, e noala mai ke kani o ko'ulele, e mokoko, e po'i hou ana, e It sounds good, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the fun things about playing with language, because when I first started writing, I would only write Hawaiian or only write English, and then I started slowly doing kind of intermediate steps. So now as right now I'm trying to write a manuscript of poems from Hi'iaka to Hopoi as she journeys throughout this journey to find Mahino and bring him back as kind of a revisiting of the story of Hi'iaka especially I don't know if you've read any of the versions or I've talked about any part of the story, but I think it's so interesting that you can sit down and listen to someone tell a story and then sit down and listen to someone else tell it and people feel different, but never have you really told the story from Hi'iaka's perspective and what it would mean for it to literally be a series of letters or poems either. And my focus is whole point because I'm kind of fascinated with their relationship, but even if Hi'iaka was writing something else or a series of songs or conversations between Hi'iaka and stuff. So, and that's how I think we can use more of it today in writing about all of the past, or we talk about them both kind of together. So there's that. So we still have like 7 minutes. We could do another writing exercise.
How to do that, to help with the memorization of the work, and then how to anything, right? I'm using this as an example of this here. This spoken word, depending on how we would verbally email or kind of like so that's the word, yeah, because it really is like Hawaiian orality. Most people now can't just start with the idea of chapter. You have to refine it on paper. You have to learn language. You have to learn these bits of history and culture to make what they're saying and ask yourself, yeah. Exactly. And absolutely. I do a writing workshop about once a semester out with Wahine Coast Elementary Schools, the 4th to 6th grade. And I've had teachers tell me, oh, that one is special ed, you're not going to get him to write it. And those are usually the very ones that by taking this type of approach, they get it. And so I had this one boy, Hawaiian boy, that they were like that, oh, he won't write, he won't do this, he won't do that. And I shared a poem and I showed a video by this awesome brother, Kuʻualoha Haiku, who works out at Waimea Valley on the other side. And he has a band too, but he also does sort of a spoken word thing. There's a ballad poem called Old School Toyota. And it's like, old school Toyota, pickup truck, 50-inch rims, you hit it up, got a pit in the back, and it goes on the whole thing. And this boy just wrote this amazing poem about going pig hunting in Ka'ala with his uncles, and it was the best poem. And all the teachers like, oh, you wouldn't even get him to write anything, and it was the best poem of all the students. Another time I shared, I think, Kuhinappa's poem, I Come From a Place. And it's about that side of the island. And so I said, all right, write something about living out here that's not in the poem. So one boy wrote a line, I come from a place where everybody on my street has a pit bull in the front yard. And I have this cartoon image in my head of like all these little pit bulls like looking out onto the street, you know. And another time I used that poem and there was some high school kids, there was a mixed group, and some high school kids from Wahine, and I said, yes, you can't do it. She already wrote about Wahine. What are we going to write about? And I was like, did she write about anything in Wahine? And they're like, she didn't write about the manawahine man on my street. Write about the manawahine man on your street. Right? So, oh, I can do that? Yes, you can. Right? But nobody's ever written about the manawahine man, as far as I know. Right? And the manawahine man I think I know is probably different from the one in Wahine. So that's, you know, where they start. We should all write about them. We should all
one that we know. I have a lady.
Oh, okay. See, it's all
What you like?
every day. What you like?
In that tone. Now adopted into our household. What you like? You gotta go high. What you like?
And you know now the next time we all see you, we're going, what you like?
We're taking that immediately.
Okay, so we're just about at 4. I think we're going to kind of gather everybody back together and see whoever would like to share whatever. And I hope this was helpful so we can get started. You know, put my email address up there. I will for you guys if you want more information about or anything at all. Oh, that's good. So you went yeah. And then I know for Victoria and Nuukahau is a playwriting drama workshop, and then we'll have a poet and a short fiction writer. And I've invited 2 great people who will be that. That same weekend? Yeah. Yeah, part of that. No excuses. Why? Because you encouragement, going. I don't know.
Now they know what good workshop is.
Should we start to do a circling type of thing?
Is it just QLCC and screw?
Okay, so since your ohana split up, then you guys all have to get together later and share.
I can, yes, that's what I was like.
Oh, they're all gonna be in a circle?
Yeah. Kapolei?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there only one of these in Kapolei?
Yeah.
only one, and it's next to it, 76 position.
Okay. Okay, I'll find it for sure.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time left, but what we wanted to do is bring everybody back together. And if anybody wants to share anything that you wrote today, for the first 2 people that agreed to share, I have Brandy, Nalani, McDougall, Saltwind, and Mahelani Perez went Nuukahau Malama collections of poetry.
It's a really good book.
Totally awesome poetry by 2 totally awesome Hawaiian women writers. So, just a little incentive. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, she gave us the metaphor
building poetry like a lay. I like that idea. So I only have 3 pua, but it's just beginning.
Woohoo!
The first pua is burden to Kuleana for loved ones. Baggage, but not flying on United, but pasted to the rock. Kindness for the birds, yet jealous of their flight. Ready to work. History soils the heart with truth from hundreds. And finally, open arms can close you in, but heal you simultaneously.
Oh, I know, right? Okay, good guys. All right, there you go.
I love that.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want that book.
So Jamaica had us write a biography or an obituary, however you wanted to approach it. And so we did a free write, and then we had to pare it down to just like a sentence, 1 to 3 sentences. So this is the shortened version called Painted. I have lived a life as a constant mixture, violently shaken by the world around me, who said I was too Haole and too Hawaiian in one can. I am a shade native Ke'oku, unlike any color of Kaneohe Bay, any tone of the Kuʻualoha Mountains, and any fiery color of a Tucson sunset. And I am ready to paint the world.
I don't have any more books, I'm sorry. But does anybody else want to share something?
I'll share. Okay.
No.
Okay. No made us do like a chart, and we had to list our actions, our consequences, and our decisions. And then after, based on what we got, we wrote a poem out of it. So my poem's about my mom. Okay. As she stood up with her long pele-looking hair flowing down her back, who knew that would be so powerful? Being in the presence of my mom was like being in the presence of a queen, and a queen she was. As she walked down the beach with her beautiful long white dress and head held high, you could never tell that she had such a brutal past. With every essence of her smile and eyes that could light up the total darkness, she hid it all so well, as if she stuck it all in a safe and lost it in the middle of the ocean. You could feel her mana, as her name was mentioned, Manawahine, giving chicken skin to the unknown, and as she turned around with the beautiful beach behind her, she started to dance. Every movement she made flowed through my veins and touched my na'au. And in my eyes, I started to cry, to know that the person dancing was my mother. With such mana, I turned to look around, and what I saw was everyone's eyes were glued to her. And at that moment, I knew that soon I will be able to dance to her legacy through my life.
I shared with my group, and I'll let the rest of you know, I'm in the process of planning an Aha Mo'olelo Hawaii, or Hawaiian Literature Symposium, that will be held October 18th through 20th at UH Manoa this year. I put my email address on the board, kuʻualoha@hawaii.edu. If any of you want more information, feel free to email me. There will be panels that talk about different aspects of Hawaiian literature. There are 5 writing workshops right now. So one, or actually 2 of them are spoken word, and one by Youth Speaks Hawaii is coordinating. So one is geared towards youth, and one is sort of for general audience. And then one will be on poetry, one is on short fiction, and those people will be confirmed soon. And Vicky, Nalani, Nubal will be doing playwriting and drama. So we'll have really awesome Hawaiian and Pacific writers talking about their work, giving writing workshops. And in the evening, we have Hawaiian literature and performance. So right now we have 3 different evenings scheduled. So one will be poetry and spoken word. One, I think, is music and storytellers, and the other one is Hawaiian theater, which will be coordinated by Tammy Ha'iliopua Baker, who some of you might know. That she does Halau Hana Kiaka, which is the Hawaiian theater. So this is the first time we're having something like this that's dedicated completely to Hawaiian literature and writing. It would be wonderful if all of you had a chance to come, at least for parts of that. It's October 18th through 20th, which is a Thursday through a Saturday. And if you email me, I will get the information out to anybody who's interested. We're just finishing up confirming different participants and such. The writing workshops will be on Friday morning for the youth, and then Saturday in morning and afternoon sessions for anybody who wants to attend. It will be at the Kamakakua Kalani Center for Hawaiian Studies, which has pretty good parking and all of that compared to the rest of the campus.
What's the title of it?
Aha Mo'olelo Hawaii, or Hawaiian Literature Symposium. And we're hoping to make this a regular event, if not annual, at least maybe every other year, to bring writers together and people who are interested in Hawaiian literature, traditional literature, writing now. I didn't mention earlier, but I'm also the editor for OEV, Native Hawaiian Journal. We've been around since 1998. We have 4 volumes, and we feature only Hawaiian writers and artists of the past and the present, and we always welcome writing in any genre, in any language. And we're really interested in doing an issue on manawahine, Hawaiian women's writing. So I would love to have all of you participate, if you like, to keep writing, and hope to see you all again at some point. And you guys have anything you want to share?
Mahalo.
Yeah, thanks for participating.
Yeah, mahalo nui. Yes.
Oh, and sorry, one more thing. If I know one of the things that makes writing hard is maybe not having a writing community or someone to read your work. My email address is incredibly easy. It's jamaicaosorio@gmail. And if you ever feel like you don't have someone to share your writing with and that's what's keeping you from writing, please email me. I know everyone in the world is really busy, but I will make time to read your work if that's what it needs to get more women writing. So, and I would feel honored to read your work. So that's that.
At email?
Yeah, email. Gmail. Sorry.
Gmail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, nowadays with social media, if anyone's interested, and because you're going to be away this next year too, to set up some sort of women's writing group based from here, you know, our group discussion on Facebook, we could do that. You know, let us know. I know you're on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. So,
Friend me.
Yeah. Friend us. Just say, hi, remember me? I was at the workshop for Aha Wahine. So, mahalo nui. Keep writing. I'm so impressed with what I heard and you know, within my group and the little bit that was shared outside, that don't ever forget and don't ever let anyone tell you differently, but you all have powerful voices. Nobody else can tell your story except for you. Nobody else can tell it better. And we all have important experiences to share that you never, ever know how it will resonate with other people. And I'll tell you this really quickly as an example of this. When I was in my early 20s, I was going through some stuff. My family, my parents were breaking up, and my father went to jail. And I was trying to be in college, and it was tough. And I ended up going to counseling. And one of my really good friends I had grown up with started asking me a lot of questions about my experience in counseling, and did not reveal for years that the reason she had asked was because she had been sexually molested when she was a child, and she never wanted to admit it, and so she was trying to go through counseling vicariously through me. And so she first said it had happened by a stranger and later by a family member. And when she was finally able to sort of get it out and tell that story to someone, which was me, I encouraged her to share it with her mother and her family, and she did. And they were more supportive than she thought that they would be. And then from that, she was able to meet a really wonderful man. And when they were getting into a serious relationship and we're talking about marriage, she said, should I tell him? And I said, yes. So she calls me and she says, I told him. And you know what his response was? That happened to me too. So they have now been together 20 years. They have an amazing marriage. They have an amazing family. And it's, to me, part of that is this idea of our experiences and our stories, and sharing them can be very, very healing for ourselves and for the people around us that we never even know sometimes how these stories resonate out and touch other people and can affect them in very, very positive ways. So that is why I'm such a cheerleader for writing and for mo'olelo. Literacy is important, but that power of the voice and coming down through these stories of our ancestors and the ancestresses as well. You know, Hina goes through abusive relationship, you know, other women. So we come from a lineage of strong, powerful women with strong, powerful voices. And sometimes just telling one story that you think this is just my story, this is just a small thing, you never know how that will ripple out and touch and affect the rest of the world in a positive way. So, mahalo nui for coming. We really, really appreciate you guys being here, and we hope to see you again.
All the best.
Okay, aloha.